Welcome to our fourth virtual roundtable in our series. Today's topic, we're going to talk about birth defect surveillance programs and opportunities to align with MCH and Title V activities. If you've been before, you already know, but my name is Justin and I'm a program analyst with the AMCHP's Clinical and Community Collaborations team. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Sabra Ankner here, waving. So as a quick overview for today, I'm going to advance to the next slide. We just did the welcome, a little bit of introductions. I'll next introduce our presenter, who will then provide a roughly 30-minute presentation, and then we'll stop the recording to open up for questions, peer sharing, any other thoughts that you guys would like to discuss. You're welcome to type questions into the chat function for Zoom, or if you prefer, we're also going to drop a Jamboard link at some point into the chat so that y'all can make posts there, or suggestions or comments. And then near the end, there will be a short evaluation within Zoom polls for us to collect additional feedback, and then we'll close out. We do want to acknowledge and thank CDC for supporting this roundtable series and the broader work that continues in this space as we move forward. And with that, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Glickman, who is a health educator with the Oregon Birth Anomalies Surveillance System. I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can begin yours. Take it away, Stephanie. Thanks.
Thanks, Justin. Okay, just a second here. Okay, can you see my screen okay? Okay, thanks,
yes.
Sabra. Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Stephanie Glickman. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm a public health educator working with Oregon's Birth Anomaly Surveillance System. For those of you who might need a visual description today, I'm a white woman with long light brown hair. I'm in my home office today, but I have a virtual background with the Oregon Health Authority logo behind me. So today we're going to talk about opportunities to align birth defect surveillance programs with state MCH Title V activities. Every state in the U.S. receives Title V funds, but not all states have birth defect surveillance programs, and the structures of these programs vary widely, as most of you are probably aware. Some have been around for a long time, some have grant-specific funding, some are situated within their MCH programs like we are, and some are in other areas of their state health department. The intention of this presentation is to promote program alignment, increase collaboration, and create some stability if needed by your program by sharing a little bit about Oregon. Okay. So I'll start by sharing about the history and structure of Oregon's Birth Anomaly Surveillance System, which going forward I will refer to as BAS. I know we all love acronyms. And then I will talk about the structure of Oregon's MCH Title V program. I could probably talk for hours about each one of these programs, so please know we're not going to go into the woods with these, but more of an overview. If anything is unclear or you'd like to chat more with our team, please reach out to me after this presentation. Finally, I will talk about program alignment. And it looks like AMCHP has provided some tools for discussion afterwards. Okay, well, let's get started. First of all, here is our small but mighty team. Vivian is our research analyst who does all the data collection, analysis, and reporting for BAS. Suzanne is the CDC MCH epidemiology assignee to Oregon and offers tremendous guidance to our program. Yesenia is our administrative specialist, and she's also an MPH student who's currently doing her capstone on folic acid. I am a public health educator, and I handle the communications, education, and outreach efforts for BAS, as well as other MCH programs. You'll notice that everyone on our team is only allocated 0.5 FTE to work on BAS activities, and the rest of our time is prioritized to other MCH programs. I also want to point out that Oregon's Title V coordinator, Narit Fischler, I'm not sure if she's here, but she was going to be here. She's probably here. She's not listed on this slide, but she is available in case anyone has specific questions about Title V at the end. Okay, so BAS beginnings. I was not here during this time at the Oregon Health Authority back in 1999. I joined in 2016, but this slide gives you an idea of when Oregon started to sort of percolate ideas about beginning to track birth anomalies. And then this timeline spans when Oregon was funded as an environmental public health site back in 2002 and goes until we received CDC funding to do birth defects work in 2016. In 2003, our fetal alcohol syndrome surveillance grant application was accepted, and Oregon did this surveillance from 2004 to 2009. In 2008, the CDC approved our birth defects grant application, but we didn't get any funding attached to that. In 2011, it was decided that the Environmental Public Health Tracking Program, which sits in our agency, but it's sort of under a different section. I'll get to that organization later. And Title V began funding BAS efforts in lieu of federal funding. And then in 2013, Oregon submitted its first birth defects data set to the CDC. In 2015, the CDC approved our application to work on critical congenital heart defect surveillance, but we still weren't funded to do this work. I'll note that Oregon doesn't have a legislative mandate for birth defect surveillance, even though at one point the March of Dimes sponsored this legislation. Oregon is also one of the last states to establish a birth defect surveillance program, so we are still in our early years of development. In 2016, our CDC grant application was approved and funded. We were funded from 2016 to 2021, and our program focus areas included surveillance, partnerships, family resources, data dissemination, program structure, quality improvement. And the 2016 CDC grant also included CCHD evaluation work. So these next slides are separated by program focus areas and show how our work plan has changed over time from being funded between 2016 and 2021 to our application plan for the new CDC grant, and then our work plan since we did not receive funding to continue our work. So on the surveillance slide, you'll see that we had hoped to add an abstractor to our team in 2022 to do passive case finding with case verification, but we weren't able to establish that. So we currently continue our passive surveillance, and Vivian, our research analyst, has been working towards migrating to a FileMaker database. This slide describes our partnership changes over time. Oregon Family to Family Health Information Center is one of our most essential partners because while we do at the Oregon Health Authority, we do the birth anomaly surveillance and primary prevention promotion, they do the bulk of the secondary prevention by supporting families impacted by birth anomalies. They also greatly inform our program through family insights, and we've been able to continue our partnership with them through all of our program changes. They've been amazing. But we haven't been able to continue to engage with our advisory committee that was established during our funded period. But there is a newer exciting partnership with Oregon's newborn screening program, which sits within the Oregon Public Health Lab. there's a new group called Innovations in Newborn Screening Interoperability, which goes beyond BASS and includes our early hearing detection and intervention program. So we're definitely excited about that. During our funded period, we were able to work with Oregon Family to Family Health Information Center to build up a bank of family resources. And we're still promoting referral pathways to family resources, but we don't have as much capacity for this work as we had hoped with our 2021 planned activities. Okay, data dissemination. Although we have limited capacity, we do have access to newer technology like Tableau, which Vivian has used in more recent years. And it's created opportunities to make data dissemination more efficient and easier for our partners and the public to access. Vivian's been building a data dashboard, which she presented a poster at the NBDPN conference recently about that. And we're super excited about this. We also continue to contribute to multi-state data, but we have limited capacity. And finally, our program structure has changed over time, as you can see with staff changes, funding changes, and work plan changes. Oregon families affected by birth anomalies depend on the surveillance and health education efforts of BASS. So without funding, we had to find ways to maintain these critical efforts. Program staff looked at the current state of BASS and Title V to identify opportunities, and Title V stepped in to fund essential BASS program efforts. So this next slide illustrates our place within our state health department, which is called the Oregon Health Authority. BASS has access to other vital programs, including, so you can see BASS here at the bottom. Newborn screening is also a program, so it's at the program level. Environmental public health tracking and birth and death records are also at the program level. And then the next level up from programs are sections. So like newborn screening is in the public health lab. Our BASS program sits within our maternal child health program. And there's a lot of other programs I did not list on here. I mean, like, I'm sure all of your org charts are just like huge monsters. So I didn't include all of that here, but just to give you a glimpse of kind of like our structure. And then this next page shows we're kind of structured differently than a lot of health departments, where we have the Oregon Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs, or we call it, in Oregon, we call it OCHN for short. When I first started working here, that acronym threw me off. I'm like, what is OCHN? But we call it OCHN, and it's across the river, literally, from our building, and is within the Oregon Health and Sciences University healthcare system, which is a very large healthcare system in Oregon. Oregon Family to Family Health Information Center, which I mentioned as a critical partner earlier, sits within OCHN. And you can see the Title V partnership between OCHN and maternal and child health. And that's because OCHN and MCH share Title V's block grant, and this shows how we're connected to their work. This slide sort of shows the whole picture. It's a lot going on, so don't get too caught up in the details. But okay, next I'm going to talk about the Title V block grant. So AMCHP, on the AMCHP page, actually has some really great resources. If you're new to understanding the Title V block grant, I encourage you to check it out. So I'm not going to read everything on this page, but if you don't know about Title V block grant, I encourage you to check out the history and the structure and the broad sweeping impacts of Title V. So you can learn about how to how to maybe align your efforts with Title V. I will put the elements of the grant, which are super helpful to our BAS program. So I bolded them, and that includes the flexibility of Title V, like the flexibility of the funds and the work plan, the accountability measures, and the infrastructure of Title V, which provides BAS as well as other programs with an anchor within MCH. Okay, so the federal government sets requirements for the block grant, including the domains listed here. States do not set these domains, but we have requirements around establishing priorities within each domain. This little map, I created this little map, and it shows our public health division is on the right side of the river, and OHSU, which is where Ocean is on the left side of the river. And there's also these little flags around the state that represent local health departments and tribes. But we have a lot more Title V grantees than these little flags. I think we maybe have like 36 or so. I couldn't like put 36 little flags on here because then you wouldn't even see Oregon. But in short, our Title V funds are shared between the State Public Health Department, the Oregon Center for Children and Youth with Special Health Needs, local public health and tribes. So the local public health and tribes are grantees of, we establish grants with them to fund their local level work. Okay. So Oregon has selected the following priorities for our current grant cycle, which includes state level priorities, which are social determinants of health and equity, trauma, ACEs, and resilience, and culturally and linguistically responsive services, as well as national priorities, which are well woman care, breastfeeding, child injury prevention, and bullying prevention. We do a needs assessment every 5 years, and that's how these priorities are selected. Our Title V work is focused on policies and systems, workforce capacity and effectiveness, assessment and evaluation, and community, individual, and family capacity. Okay, so I'm only going to talk about the domains and priorities that are relevant to our BAS work, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. I do want to point out that the national performance measures, because they're a part of our accountability framework. National performance measures are set by the federal government, and the ESMs, which stands for Evidence-Informed Strategy Measures, those are state-created measures, which allows states a bit more flexibility. So for the women maternal health domain, the national performance measure is % of women with past year preventive visit, because the priority in this domain is well woman care, which gets to a lot of our BAS primary prevention strategies. And next is the perinatal infant health domain, and our performance measures around this domain are around breastfeeding. And so we have a joint Title V and BAS work group, and that includes the lead for well woman care and the lead for breastfeeding. So it touches on those two domains of women maternal health and perinatal infant health. And the next domain is children and youth with special health care needs, which is coordinated by our partners over Ocean. So we don't have an internal work group for that, but we do meet with the Oregon Family to Family Health Information Center on a regular basis to collaborate on work. But the work at Ocean is especially aligned with BAS secondary prevention strategies. So if you're thinking of aligning your Title V and birth defects work, I really think that working closely with whoever oversees your SHIN domain would be really critical in this effort. And then finally, the last domain is the cross-cutting systems building domain. We know that families impacted by disabilities experience greater hardships than those without disabilities when it comes to things like income, housing, education, accommodating workplaces, discrimination, social connection, and more. And these disparities are compounded by racism. So all of the strategies listed here work to improve the health of the population we serve. So there's trauma-informed care, equity and anti-racism, workforce diversity, addressing systems level disparities, access to care, partnerships, community capacity, economic supports and housing, food sovereignty and security, as well as emergency preparedness. And then Title V also, like that flexibility that I was talking about, there's a lot of other programmatic efforts, and I don't even know if everything is listed on here, but Title V funding supports work beyond the identified priority areas, including the BASS program. So some of those areas include Oregon Mother's Care, which is a program where there's local access sites that help people do pregnancy testing, get connected to prenatal services, helps them get onto the Oregon Health Plan, which is our Medicaid. Title V also supports home visiting. It supports PRAMS, which is the Pregnancy Risk Assessment Monitoring System. It supports safe sleep initiatives and also assessment, evaluation, and informatics. Okay, so if you aren't already connected to your Title V program, I encourage you to learn more about your state Title V priorities and strategies and see maybe like where your birth defects program can align with those efforts. This website, and you can actually scan the QR code with your phone camera if you want to go to HRSA has a website where you could select your state and then you could bring up your state profile and look at those priorities and strategies. It's pretty cool. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about our program alignment efforts. In 2002, Oregon's BASS began aligning its strategies with those of the Oregon MCH Title V program to increase capacity, provide strategic direction, which was a big piece that was missing when funding ended, and improve functionality across Oregon's MCH systems. And this was sort of like our aha moment. Okay. So why? When I was at the conference, I got this question a lot. Why align with Title V? Well, when we didn't receive funding, MCH leadership saw the importance of BASS, and they really wanted us to continue this work. And so they decided they would support it with Title V funds. We also, our team noticed the national effort between MBDPN and AMCHP to sort of join forces and promote this alignment efforts. We also, in looking at sort of our broad sweeping goals for BASS and Title V, there was a lot of alignment there. So maybe some of our strategies were different, but ultimately we're all looking for the same outcomes. There was also already an existing Title V women's and infants team. So it seemed like a nice fit for our BASS team to tuck into. It's really strengthened collaboration between programs in ways that I think were sort of unexpected too. And another big part about deciding to align with Title V was we really didn't want to duplicate any work. You all probably feel this way too, of just like a never-ending, overflowing plate of work that you're responsible for. And we didn't want to add another thing to that list. So we really wanted to use it in a way to leverage existing efforts, but not duplicate work. And like I said up above, the outcomes and the goals are mostly the same. So when I was reflecting on this a little bit earlier, I was thinking about the term symbiosis, which usually is about like ecosystems and, biology and stuff. But I really think there's like a nice program symbiosis with this alignment. For example, BAS benefits from Title V policy level expertise, the partnerships at the local level, and especially the equity approach to that Oregon has adopted in the most recent grant period. And then Title V, on the other hand, benefits from the BAS surveillance data, our health education efforts for outreach, in-house expertise of impacts of birth anomalies, and access to our partners. So some of like the broad sweeping, kind of like the, what we're all focused on in all of our MCH programs, and your BAS or your birth defects program might not be an MCH, but I'm sure your birth defects program is focused on healthy pregnancies, healthy childbirth, healthy infants, supporting families impacted by birth anomalies to have the resources they need to thrive, and to support individuals with birth anomalies to go on to live healthy lives. So we're all sharing these program outcomes in our view of all MCH programs. And then in Oregon, we started to see aligned strategies. So I mentioned Oregon Mothers Care earlier as a prenatal resource in our state. They're increasing access to health insurance, prenatal care, and other resources for pregnant individuals. And so that is kind of like a way for BAS to provide, tips specifically for preventing birth anomalies. And then there's Will Woman Care increases access to preconception, interconception care, which those are really critical places to provide primary prevention strategies. And then breastfeeding promotion, that is connected with WIC. And so that gives us another mechanism for putting all the pieces together. And then over at Ocean, which is the Oregon Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs, they provide support resources for families. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all these, but there's a lot of areas of aligned strategies. That's basically what I wanted to say. So when we saw this sort of aha moment, and we developed sort of like a work plan or like a business justification for aligning the efforts in a more intentional way, our BAS team, we brought this up to our MCH leadership team, and they approved that we could do this. And we began to join monthly meetings with the Title V Women and Infants team. We also added a state level strategy to the Title V Well Woman Care Plan in 2023, which was a strategy to strengthen partnership. So like the first strategy that we added to Title V was pretty general. So if you're wanting to add to your Title V plan, I think for the first one, it could just be like, we're going to make a plan. Here's our plan to make a plan. That's really all it has to be. And then from there, it can become more sophisticated and more specific. And most importantly, I think, is that we were able to anchor the existing BAS work plan to reflect Title V funded BAS scope of work. So it really gave us an anchor in MCH, because I don't know, like I sort of felt like our program was kind of floating without that Title V anchor. So some of the benefits of collaboration, it's just been really, really great. So it provides both Title V and BAS with a broadened view of our work and impacts of our work. It reduces duplication efforts. When we work in silos, someone over here might be doing the same exact thing or very similar thing that you're doing over here. And so when you start talking to each other, you can learn about that, and you can kind of figure out ways, okay, well, you take on this and I'll take on this aspect, and we can work together to make this happen. It also bridges information gaps. We've learned so much from having our PRAMS coordinator on this joint team, and Title V has also learned a lot from BAS surveillance. It leverages connections and existing efforts. And like I mentioned earlier about silos, it reduces those silos. So some of the current BASS Title V activities include data to action. So I mentioned Yesenia earlier as an MPH student working on folic acid. She's been working with our team to plan improvements for outreach, and that includes engagement with Title V partners. Health promotion. So we are updating pregnancy, or actually we just finished doing this. We updated pregnancy outreach for Title V funded sites to include birth anomaly prevention tips. And then we've got our joint BASS Title V team. So down the road, what we're looking towards is what we want to do next is we want to map out existing and potential partnerships to have sort of like a comprehensive list of partners that we could tap into and maybe expand our reach. We want to incorporate gender inclusive language, which we've already started to research and understand that a little bit better and how to apply that. It's tricky when you work in a maternal and child health program. And improve understanding of internal and external workflows so we could see where the pieces fit together better. And then also facilitate data exchange with partners. And real quickly, I'm wrapping up, Sabra and Justin, just so you know. I see so many opportunities from this alignment, but Oregon still does have, some challenges for doing our birth anomaly surveillance work. And that includes, we still don't have CDC funding. So we still have limited capacity. We would love to, Vivian and I would love to work full time on BASS, but we're split between multiple programs. We would love to have an abstractor work with our team, but we have limited capacity. BASS is still relatively young. So some of the infrastructure that some other states have, we just don't have at this point. And I don't think necessarily that Title V can get us there. So I don't know, hopefully in the future we can build up our infrastructure a little stronger. And with the limited capacity, BASS staff are stretched between competing priorities. I also work on oral health. I work on Title V. I work on all kinds of different MCH programs. So that can be a struggle some days. We don't have a state mandate or state general funds to do this work. And then while we try to collaborate closely with the Oregon Center for Children with Special Health Care Needs, just the fact that SHIN is part of a different organization, that does create somewhat of a barrier to that kind of collaboration.